Hello everyone, I'm so glad to be with you today. Today we're going to learn that God is forever. Forever means it goes on and on and on and on, and I could keep going, but you get it. So God is older than anyone we know. Let's start right now by thinking of some people that you have known or seen that were very old. Think about some old people right now that you know. If you're with a grown-up or someone else is watching with you, turn and say who you're thinking of to that person. Did you say a grandparent maybe, or somebody that you know from church? Well, now that you're thinking of a person, maybe somebody that you've seen before, try to think now and guess how old that person is. Just make a guess. How old do you think that person is? So you can say it to who you're watching with or say it out loud. And if you want to check to see how close you were, you can ask a grown-up. We all know people who have lived a very long time, but none of them are even as close to as old as God, because God is forever. His life never ends. Forever can be a little hard to understand. So we're going to learn more about it today. Let's say a quick prayer to get started. God, thank you for being with us forever. So for today's lesson, I'm hoping that you can get some paper. Now, I'm using a really large piece because it'll be easier to see. You can use a regular sized piece of paper, but you need some paper and either some markers or some crayons and either a stapler or tape. I'm going to use a stapler today, and my markers are waiting here for me. And you can get any colors. You don't need to worry about the colors I have. Okay, so if you need to pause and get your supplies together, go ahead and pause here. So to start with, I want to know if you have ever heard of a timeline before. Now, maybe you don't know what that means. So let's think for a second just about the two words. Time, kind of telling us when something will happen, and line, just straight. Think of a straight line. And that tells you a little bit about a timeline. We're going to look at a timeline of my day on Wednesday of this week. So here's my timeline. So in the morning, here's the beginning of my day. I woke up and I got my family out of bed and had breakfast and got everyone ready for the day. And then we left for school. So I have two children, I took them both to school. And then after that, I went to teach a class. I teach college students at the university. So I was at work for a little while teaching class. And then when class was over, I got the chance to sit outside with some of the people that I work with and have a coffee and talk a little bit about things happening at work. After that, I did more work because it was the middle of my workday. So I was grading papers and getting ready to teach lessons. And then I had another class. And after that class was done, I got to go home and have dinner with my family, and then put my children to bed. And then eventually I made it to bed myself. So my day had a beginning, a middle, and an end, all of which I could lay out here on my timeline. And so we're going to talk about a timeline of things that God has done today. Okay, so beginning, middle, and end. Here's where you're going to need your paper. We're going to learn that God is forever. To give us a better idea of what forever means, some of the things that happened in the Bible can be put on our timeline. So we'll read first and put a timeline on our papers. So here I want you to take your paper and lay it long ways in front of you. Again, it can be a regular size piece of paper, and you can write smaller than I will, but mine's going to be big enough to share with you. So put it sideways. And starting at one end of the paper, it's up to you if you make a little dot or not. Sometimes I like to make the little dot just because it's a little easier for me. I'm going to make an end dot and a beginning dot and connect them. And it's not perfect. Guess what? Nobody's perfect except God and Jesus. And they're not the ones drawing these lines. So it's okay if yours isn't perfect either. But you should have a beginning and an end. Good. Okay, so now I'm going to tell you some things that happened, and I want you to either write a couple of words to summarize it, or you can draw a picture. And I might do a little bit of both here today. So The first thing is listen to this passage from the Bible, and then we will figure out what to put on our timeline together. All right, so in John 1, verses 1 and 2, in the beginning was the Word. I'm going to pause there, because one thing I want you to know is that sometimes in the Bible, what it will say is the Word, but what it really means is Jesus. And in this case, this passage is telling us that the Word is Jesus, so we're using it the same way. So in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was with God in the beginning. So in the beginning, Jesus and God were together. So on your timeline right now, go ahead and put something down that shows Jesus and God being together. So I'm going to write Jesus and God. Or if you want to just draw a picture, you can just draw a picture as well. And one thing that helps us remember Jesus is light and that it shines is a sun. So for some of the pictures today, I'm just going to put a sun down. I want to use my yellow marker for that. So if you want to write, you can write a couple of words. If you want to draw, there's an option to draw. Okay, so that's my timeline. First point, Jesus and God were there together at the beginning. After that, we learn from the Bible that Jesus created everything. Everything, everything, everything. So you can draw a picture of anything here that you want because it was all created here at the beginning this way. So I'll write Jesus creates, C-R-E-A-T-E-S, everything. Okay, so Jesus creates everything is right here on my timeline because that happened really close to the beginning. And whatever picture you draw could be anything. You could draw a cat or your house or a person, anything, okay? So I'm going to just draw a little picture here that is going to stand for the earth to me. There's oceans on the earth, a little blue. And there's land when we look at a globe, a little green. So I just drew a little earth. All right. So that happened very near the beginning too. Everything came to be. And one of the next things we'll learn about, let's skip ahead just a little bit because there's a lot of time where things happened in between here and the earth worked toward this big balance, okay? And one of the people that was then brought to earth, sent to earth, born, was a man named John the Baptist. So I'm going to write John the Baptist, and do your best, nobody's checking your work. And I'm going to draw a little picture of a man here. That's all. Just a little man, stick figure. Yours can be a little more detailed. And if you want to pause to work on this anytime, go ahead and pause. But I have John the Baptist here. And John the Baptist had an important message. And he shared that Jesus is the light. That was something else that was happening at the beginning. But John learned it and wanted to share it. And so I'm going to add another sunshine here as my picture next to John the Baptist. And on my point, we can just write something simple if you want to write about Jesus is the light. Jesus is the light. Good. All right. So I have John the Baptist and a sun again to help me see that Jesus is the light. Another thing that happened around this time is that even though Jesus was sent to earth, not everybody recognized him. And so I'm going to just put a mark here, a point, and draw a question mark because even though Jesus was there, we didn't recognize him. Who's that guy? So question mark. And if you want to write something, you could write that they didn't know Jesus. So he was there, but they didn't know him. They didn't know who he was. All right, so those things happened for us kind of here at this point in our timeline. At that next stage, we're going to find that even though the world didn't recognize Jesus, Jesus performed an act that made us all children of God. And so I'm going to put another point right next to my question mark and draw a shorter stick figure so that I can tell it's a child. I'm going to give it a little smiley face because children are usually pretty happy. Okay. So children of God, and I'm going to write that above my dot. Again, you don't have to do both. You can just write or draw. Children of God. And so we've been here as the children of God. This is sort of when the Bible tells us that it happened, and lots of other things happened. But here at the end, I want to talk to you about a different chapter in the Bible, a different book of the Bible, Revelation. And so what we learn in Revelation is that we have a pretty nice sense of what heaven is like for us. Okay, so I'm going to put a point, leave a little space. You're not going the whole way to the end yet, a little bit away from your end point. I'm going to drop a dot down. And what we learn in Revelation 22:1 is that there's a clear river in heaven. So I'm going to draw a squiggly river with my blue marker. Doesn't look like a river, it kind of looks like blue bacon, but you'll know it's a river. That's what I think. And so in heaven, there is a river. I'm writing the word above my dot. We also learned about a tree of life in Revelation. The tree of life. I'm going to write tree of life and draw a tree by that dot. And your trees can look like anything. Tree of life. You'll know that's what it is. Tree of life. We also know that there is no more sadness or curse on anything. This is what we're told. And so I'm going to draw a dot and write a smiley face to help us remember how happy we will feel and how wonderful that is. And I'm going to write no more curse. That's C-U-R-S-E. So there's my happy face. No more curse. And we also learn that God will shine forever. Forever. That's what we were talking about before. We're trying to understand forever right now. So at the end of my timeline, I'm going to put another sun there. He's shining forever. He is here with us forever. And if you want to write a word above that dot, forever. F-O-R-E-V-E-R. Light will shine forever. So do you understand forever now? Or is it still a little confusing? I mean, this is one line, right? We think that there's a beginning and an end here, but forever, there's no end. And that's a little different. That's a little confusing. Some of these things are true now and were true when they happened, and those are the things that last forever. Some of these things might not always be true. Like John the Baptist, he's not still around anymore. The things that he did were real, but they only happened here. The things that we're seeing here described in heaven, the light that shines, that's happening across our whole timeline. So even though we're used to having an end to things, God's a little different. I want you to flip your paper over now. We're going to talk about some of the things that God is to help us understand forever a little bit more. So your paper can be tall or long. It's not too important, but I'm going to keep my paper long right now. And in the middle of my paper, I want to start thinking of some things that I could use to describe God. So I'll write God is, and then I'm going to write my description. And if you don't feel like writing words today, you could draw some pictures or just hearts. You could cover hearts all over to help us remember that God is loving. That's my first one. I'm going to write loving. And you write the things that come to your mind. And when I write mine, I will share what I think of. So God is loving. He is kind. He made us. He protects us. And what other things have you thought of? He cares about us. He protects us. I almost forgot. He is forever. So on the back of your page, hopefully now you have some things written down. What were some of the things that you thought of? He's loving. He's forgiving. He's our friend. So maybe you had different answers than me. That's okay. It's about how you understand God in your heart. So forever isn't necessarily a beginning and an end. Instead, forever is a little bit more like a circle that never ends. If we look at this circle, there's not really a beginning and an end. There's not a place to start and a place to end because it keeps going on forever. So with your page facing out, here's where we're going to use our tape or stapler. Now, if somebody can help you, tape is probably pretty easy. I'm doing this just by myself, so I'm going to use a stapler. So I'm going to put a few staples in on both sides. And I can see this timeline inside still. I can see the things as they happened. But some things are going to happen forever. And so I'm going to take my yellow, and on the outside, maybe you already had hearts, but I'm just going to draw some little suns to help me remember that the light of Jesus and the love of God go on forever. So you decorate your circles how you want. You know, one other thing that I noticed while I'm making my circle is that when I draw a sun, I also draw a little circle. No beginning, no end, round and continuous. God's love is forever. God is forever. We're going to watch a small video here now that tells us a little more about how God is forever.
God is forever. God was here before the beginning of the world. Then, He made everything. God was here when baby Moses was floating in a basket in a crocodile-filled river. God sent Pharaoh's daughter to pull him out and keep him safe. God was here when the Israelites escaped from Egypt and outran the Egyptian army by running through a sea. God was here when Deborah had to help scared Barak lead an army to battle. And God's team won. God was here when the Israelites were far from home, living as prisoners in another country. And God even helped them get home and build a new temple. God came here in a very physical way by sending His Son Jesus as a baby. God was here in Jesus when Jesus grew up and died on the cross for us. God was here when Jesus beat death and came back to life. God was here again when He poured out the Holy Spirit on the first Christians. They had tongues of fire over their head and could speak languages they didn't even know. Saul got to meet God on the road to Damascus on his way to hurt Christians. Instead, Saul became Paul and started telling everyone about Jesus because he had met God. And God will be forever in heaven, an amazing place where we can live with Him forever too. God always was, is now, and always will be. God is forever.
God is forever. He was around before anything in that video that we just saw. He never began. He just always was. Plus, God will be forever in heaven. He's at work now because God always was. He is now, and He always will be. God is forever. Let's say a short prayer to end today. Dear God, thank You for being forever for us, for making us and loving us for always, like a circle with no end. Amen. Thanks, everybody. I hope to see you again another time soon.